everyone. This is Matt Valley here with the Rock and Roll Research Podcast. Thanks for joining me on another episode. I'm really pleased to invite Philip Noyed here with me from CaringBridge to the podcast. Hello, Philip.
Hello.
Beautiful studio.
Thank you so much. I love it.
Great, great. Well, you know, we're called the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, but rock and roll and music in general, of course, is just one of countless expressions of art. And so here we're going to be exploring another expression, which might be obvious by the image, but I'm super excited to have you with me, Philip. So a little bit about Philip. I first met him a couple years ago when I was on a consulting engagement with an organization called CaringBridge. A lot of people are probably familiar with CaringBridge. But if you're not, it really is a truly wonderful organization that provides a platform to connect people with their loved ones throughout a difficult health journey. And they've provided love, support, communication, and community to countless people for the past 23 years. It's always a real pleasure when you have a chance to work on a business that does good for the world. And so I really loved that, and I worked with Philip, who's the senior creative designer at CaringBridge. So not specifically insights, but you might imagine that he was leading the community insights and understanding part of that engagement as well, as it intimately informs the work that you do on the creative side. So along the way, I learned that Philip, in addition to being a supremely talented creative designer, is also an extremely accomplished artist, both nationally and internationally. And in fact, I was flying in town one day and he asked which terminal I flew into at the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. Philip has a couple of just amazing geometric and light field installations at the MSP airport. So if you fly through, keep a lookout for that, and I'll let Philip talk a little bit about that. But really, really excited to have you here, Philip.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here too.
All right, so we'll talk about that good, fun art stuff. But let's start with your professional career. So I know that you're working in design and you have for quite some time, branding as well. Why don't you tell us sort of the story about how you got into what you're doing, and a little bit about how human understanding and insights might feed into and support your work.
Well, I was an East Asian Studies major in college, which wouldn't lead you to think that I would become a creative director and an artist. But I lived in Japan for 3 years and I learned how to speak Japanese. I studied the history and I studied the art and the literature. So it was a really well-rounded career. And one of the years I was there, I became an English teacher. And so that helped me become a writer. And my final job in Japan was being a communications specialist for an organization that was doing trade with New York City and of course the world. And I really loved learning about ceramics, and I became a potter, which is also a user-centered design because it's all about how things feel in your hand. And then I also came back from Japan. I went back and forth like a comet. And I studied photography and then filmmaking. Those two mediums were so powerful at the time. And then I was able to work on Purple Rain with Prince
Wow.
as a production assistant. And so I was on the site of every shoot every single day and loved seeing the production of what Prince was doing, and then seeing the fruition of it, where he went from being like a regional star to being an international rock star.
Oh, that's amazing.
So basically, I kind of was traveling around Europe and so on. I came back and I started in advertising right about the same time as desktop publishing happened. And so my whole career has been riding the exponential change of computing. So essentially in 1997, I built my first website. And then Target recruited me for my company at Fingerhut. And I really learned about e-commerce, website design, storytelling. We did a blog way back then, website of the year in 97 and 99. Then Target recruited me, so I went there and I stood up Target.com. And
Wow.
there I discovered user experience design. I had two different user experience usability of people on my staff. And so everything we did, we tested to see how it was used by a user, and that informed all of our design decisions. Then I was very happy to be named like the top usability website by a magazine back, way back when. So then I moved from just doing e-commerce, which was, you know, quite a lot. Then I moved into doing overall branding, which meant everything from, you know, logo positioning to TV commercials, billboards, print, website, and seeing the whole picture. We're using a lot of data insights like Cycle to be able to understand who the people were that we were marketing to, and figuring out how to differentiate and make the brands relevant within each marketplace. So I love that whole ability to go into an organization and look at it from a data and analytics point of view, and then update it. So I did that at Schwann's. I rebranded Schwann's and redid their website, built an app. And then finally I landed at CaringBridge. And CaringBridge at the time had a really old looking brand, a really old looking website, and an app that was really quite out of date. And so in the last 5 years, I've been able to rebrand the building, rebrand CaringBridge, update the website, and also launch new apps that are 4.9 stars, and all doing it from a user experience design platform and understanding. And, you know, really happy to have partnered with you to be able to get the analytics that really helped inform our design decisions.
That's great. It's a great story, and is a lot of time and effort during the day, but somehow you have found time to really be quite an accomplished artist in your own right. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that experience, and maybe your favorite story from your time as an artist.
Well, my whole time as an artist has been an exploration and discovery. And once I kind of master something, I keep my eye on what's happening from a technological standpoint, and I hop into it. So I started as a potter, and then I became an oil painter. And talking about music, I have sketchbooks that are kind of like the black and white notation. And then when I'm painting, I feel like I'm actually providing the orchestration and the harmonies and the counterpoints from a color standpoint to bring the paintings to life, just as a musician looks at music and then is able to transform that into the music that everybody hears. Then I discovered photography in terms of blur motion photography of my paintings, and I was able to figure out how to have my prints, like this print here. It's an acrylic piece that then has the image put right on it, and then I light it with LED lights. And acrylic is such an amazing material because you can cut it to form. So like the ones at the airport that you talked about, it's a 25-foot long angle that goes up, and then it goes into a bunch of diamonds that go into a complete curve. And I'm able to create from many little things a big vision. And now I'm experimenting in VR, and I've created a painting that you can walk into in VR, and then a light experience that covers 15 different spaces, and you actually walk into outer space through a black hole, and then you're in the universe. So
fascinating.
And so a story would be, I created this piece called The Political Pendulum, and it's based on Arthur Schlesinger's idea that the politics go either left or right. And so I created a globe that had political buttons from Garfield to Roosevelt to Nixon to I Like Ike, all the way up to the contemporary dates. And it's a globe that has boxing gloves on either side, so it sways either left or right. And then underneath it, there's a blue side, a red side. In the middle is the purple side. And so whoever really wins the purple, the independence, wins the election. So it was really a cool piece. And I brought it out for 4th of July one time. And then at our house, we had a drain issue that put sludge all over it. And my wife was like, "Oh my God, we ruined it." I'm like, "No, we nailed it. This is what it's all about: is mudslinging and moving left and right, and so
Perfect.
it made it perfect."
Oh, that's great. And is that, I know that you actually have a show coming up in Minneapolis, which is great to hear considering we're all sort of stuck in the house during the pandemic. So it's great to hear that things are opening up a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Is that piece going to be there, by the way?
It is not actually. It's in my studio here. So that shows at the Tractor Works on North Washington in Minneapolis, and it's open to the public. It's very much set up for socially distanced viewing.
Great.
I have 30 pieces that include oil paintings, some of which are 3D. So when you look in with 3D glasses, the paintings actually are 3D. And then I have a bunch of light works as well. And finally, I just put in a piece last weekend called Soar, which is 7 different diamonds that are soaring above. It's a mobile and it's kinetic, and so it moves around as you walk in. And I kind of struggled as an artist with everything that's been going on about, should I even be showing art at this point? Because, we had George Floyd, and it's like a lot of public art, and so what's the place of it? And so I decided to title the show The Joy of Color, because my art's all about inclusion and rainbows and all colors being equally beautiful, and so it's a celebration of color.
That's great to hear. Very, very timely as well. So undoubtedly, since you've kind of followed these parallel paths, a professional career and a life as an artist, undoubtedly there are some lessons that you've been able to apply from one to the other. Is there anything you can share that is kind of a picture of the convergence of those two worlds?
Yes, absolutely. I think about the user experience first for both art and for creative direction at an organization. And with my art, a lot of times people think about images on the wall and it's a self and other experience. And so I've been thinking about how do I create immersive art experiences that transform spaces. So the art that's at the airport, the colors from the images go on the floor, and you can actually feel the colors. And so the person's inside of the artwork. I also have a sculpture that I use dichroic film. It's a kinetic mobile, and it's 7 different diamonds that cascade down, and they change colors depending upon where you are looking and where the sun is, and the colors dance around the entire environment freely. And so it's also a performing arts center, so people are being touched by colors throughout it. So I like to think, well, what is it when a child sees this color dancing around, and how do they enjoy that? And I always am thinking, especially now with VR, where somebody's going through different places, how do they wayfind and how do they experience it from a user experience standpoint?
Oh, that's great. That's great. So just thinking then about what the future might have in store for understanding humans and understanding the user experience. Do you have any forecasts or insights that you might share into that?
Well, I think that people don't know just how rapidly VR and AR and MR, which is mixed reality, are to becoming prevalent. And so essentially last year there was $4 billion spent on VR and AR research alone.
Wow.
And it's giant companies like Amazon, or like Apple and Facebook, Microsoft, and mostly it's gamers and B2B people who have been able to see the impact of it.
Yep.
But I think that with 5G and smaller headsets, that's going to become much more prevalent. And actually, in the time of COVID, the sales have been just flying up because I can go to Google Earth, for instance, and I can like go to Mount Fuji and then fly through the sky and then go for a walk in Kyoto from my studio. So I love traveling, and I can still do it in VR. But I would say in 2 years, like I think right now we're like the flip phone, And then 2 years from then, all of a sudden the iPhone came out. I think that we're at the flip phone stage, and that in 2 years, we'll have a lot more headsets available.
Cool, great. You know, you have such a unique perspective, Philip, and this being a podcast, would love to know what other resources, podcasts, blogs, sites, books, what others are really meaningful to you, or do you find some value out of, or are you reading today?
I find Peter Diamandis and Stephen Coulter, who wrote the book Abundance and Bold and the Future is Faster Than You Think, to be brilliant and prescient. And I think that just the book Bold is so fantastic because it talks about the digitization, the democratization,
Democratization.
Yes, and the exponential change that is happening in a very clear-sighted way that kind of gets out of the politics of whatever's going on, just to look at all the improvements that have happened in the last 50 years and that are on the horizon today. Secondly, I always listen to Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. They are listening to what's happening and provide really thought-provoking analysis. And I love the idea of pivot, especially with COVID. Everybody's having to pivot their business plans and to think differently. And so it's interesting to see how the larger companies in Silicon Valley are doing that. Modern Art Notes by Tyler Green is great. And my daughter, if I plug her, she has a podcast called Life with Color, which is about eating disorders, which she's been recovering from. And it's a really touching, strong podcast that I'm really proud that she has the courage to be able to talk about, but just how society treats body image and how she's been able to kind of help people to just be comfortable with who they are.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that, Philip. So being that this is the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, I have to turn it a little bit to rock and roll. I don't want to seed what your answer might be here, but I'll leave on a fun note. So the classic desert island disc question: you're stranded on a desert island. You've got 3 records. You're by yourself, right? 3 records for the end of time. What are they?
This is a huge challenge because I love music from all eras and all locations, and I love Brian Eno, because he's such a thought leader. But I landed on New Order singles.
I can get behind that.
Krong Bin, Mr. White. That's a Thai surf band that when you get in that groove, it's just magical.
Cool.
And the Gorillaz, the Now Now, with the first song featuring George Benson with the most melodic guitar intro that you'll ever hear. And I can just groove on that all day long.
Excellent. Very cool. Good choices. Good choices. A couple that I need to look up that I haven't heard myself. So I appreciate that. Super. Is there anything that I haven't covered here that you'd like to share, Philip?
No, I think that this has been a real nice conversation, so I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the great side benefits of this. Oh, go ahead.
Just to talk a little bit about CaringBridge. It's a nonprofit that its mission is to be able to help anybody on a health that nobody goes through a health journey alone. It's one organization I've worked at that is a love mark in terms of how people feel about it, because it makes such an important difference. So if you know anybody who needs to have help during the health journey, CaringBridge is right there for them. And it's a place that I'm really honored to be able to work with and be able to help people in a really meaningful manner. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I agree with everything that you said there. I was honored to work with you on CaringBridge, and it's a fantastic organization. So I appreciate that. Good. Well, this has been a really fascinating conversation, Philip. I'm so excited to be able to scratch a little bit beneath the surface of what we've chatted along the way, and this has provided a nice outlet to reconnect with you and other people that I'm talking to here. So I really appreciate it. I wish you all the best with your upcoming show. And I'd gladly trade spaces with you if I could call that my office.
You're always welcome whenever you can start traveling.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Philip. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye.